This is every single fight to make after UFC 280 Oliveira versus Makhachev. I've got all of the key fighters from that card on the screen right now. Some winners, some losers, and you may notice there is an empty box next to all of them, and that's where their next opponent's going to go, who I have hidden around the perimeter of the screen. I'll slowly reveal those opponents one by one as the video goes on and place them where they belong on the screen. Let's start straight away with the main event. Islam Makhachev defeats Charles Oliveira in dominant fashion, finishes him in the second round with an arm triangle, and I do believe we're going to see that quick turnaround from Islam Makhachev. You know the fight I'm going to pull out here, Alexander Volkanovski. As much as I want this video to be about the fights that I really want to happen next, it's also a bit of like reality, like this is the fight that's going to happen next. It's the fight I want to happen next as well, but I'm just letting you know for the rest of the fights that are going to maybe be announced on this card, there's a dose of reality. This isn't just what I want. This is what I believe is going to happen. Makhachev, Volkanovski in Australia, pound for pound #1 on the line. I reckon this is the matchup to make, and I love the super fight. I think Volkanovski's got a decent chance. I don't think he's going to win. The size, I think, is going to be a little bit too much for him, and on top of the like heavy wrestling game that we haven't really seen him take on for quite some time. So I feel as though we're going to see Islam Makhachev win that one, but I do like the idea of Makhachev going over to Australia, because outside of Makhachev Volkanovski, I don't think Australia would feel the same if it was Volkanovski Yair Rodriguez, Volkanovski Josh Emmett. You know what I'm saying? I feel as though to have that big main event in Australia, you'd want to have your pound for pound #1 Australian fighter Alexander Volkanovski versus Islam Makhachev, and you got to have Volk on there. You know what I mean? Israel Adesanya, although he's from that area of the world, it kind of feels weird having him be the Australian guy over there, being from New Zealand, and I'm sure some of the Australians feel the same. So having the undisputed pound for pound #1 fighter who is Australian on the card, taking on his biggest test in Islam Makhachev against all the odds, that's the matchup I want to see, and I think it would be a big one, a big pay-per-view. They've already got Whittaker versus Costa on the card as well, and then you can save Israel Adesanya for another big American pay-per-view at some point after that next year in maybe April, or we'll see, maybe Pereira wins, and we're talking about another Brazil event in the middle of next year, so we'll see how it goes. Moving on, Charles Oliveira lost. It's okay, though. He just lost in the main event. It's fine. Everything's going to be fine. I was actually considering a Holloway matchup, in all honesty, but I realised that if Oliveira just wins a fight, he kind of has to get a title shot again, you know what I'm saying? Because although he wasn't considered the champion, actually no he doesn't, because he wasn't considered the champion, now I'm thinking about it. But I feel as though the Holloway fight is kind of like a... First of all, it's hard to move Holloway up to lightweight knowing that Volk's moving to lightweight, because then if Holloway wins and Volk somehow wins, where does he go from there? You know what I mean? It'll be a little bit confusing. But then you've got Charles Oliveira, and I feel like it's almost like a disservice to the division to have him fight someone outside of the rankings. You kind of got to use him against someone who's in the rankings, and someone who took no damage in their last fight and is coming off a win on the very same card of UFC 280 is Beneil Dariush. And I think that's the perfect fight to make. And I also believe, listen, did Oliveira get dropped? Yeah, but it wasn't like a brutal slumping concussive knockdown. He was off balance on one leg after throwing a flying knee. He got sent to his back a little bit. You know what I mean? He wasn't out or delirious or like, he's going to be able to turn around reasonably quickly if he wants. And he's not getting any younger. I think the Oliveira-Dariush matchup makes all the sense. In all honesty, you can't give the winner of Poirier-Chandler a title shot, and you also don't want to delay the division so long to where you're having Dariush wait for a winner of that matchup, or having Dariush wait for a winner of Gaethje versus Fiziev. Not to mention, Dariush is great friends with Gaethje. He's not going to want to take that fight. He's also pretty good friends with Michael Chandler as well. So, in both guys' cases, I think this is the fight to make. Straight away, January, Brazil, and have the winner of it ready to take on, if it's Oliveira, to take on another contender to get his title shot, or if it's Beneil Dariush, to get him his title shot, in all honesty. So let's go Oliveira Dariush. I think Dariush is the most deserving compared to all these other big name guys that just want to talk about money fights and all this. Moving on. Aljamain Sterling won in the co-main event. A little bit of a weird fashion, but he won. You know what I mean? And you can't blame him for the person that showed up in front of him, who was injured with the shoulder injury. But Again, this is one of those things where it's not necessarily something I think should happen or I want to desperately happen, but it's just what they're going to do. You know what I mean? They've really hit the jackpot with that judge's decision on OMalley versus Yan. You know what I mean? I'm sure the UFC employees were backstage, like, either doing the cross or alhamdulillahin, whatever they were doing backstage, depending on what sort of religion they're to, but they were praying to some gods. Maybe they were all just collectively, regardless of their religious background, praying to the MMA gods when that split decision was being called, in a hopes that there would be another 29-28 to OMalley. And their prayers were answered. They've got OMalley to a spot where he can fight for a title. Yes, you could say, but Marlon Vera deserves it more because he beat OMalley. I understand that. But they're not going to give it to Marlon Vera, and you know they're not going to give it to Marlon Vera. And in all honesty, if you give the title shot to OMalley right now, first of all, Aljo's kind of ready to go. You know what I mean? He's ready to go. And it's a good matchup for him, and he'll want OMalley, and he called out OMalley. So Hudo's going to play a bunch of games. You don't really need that. Let's just do Sandhagen Vera on the same card as Sterling versus OMalley, and then ignore Merab forever because he doesn't want to fight Aljo, so he shouldn't exist at bantamweight. Ignore him. Absolutely take no notice of Merab in any way whatsoever because he's solely out to ruin the division. Let's do Sterling versus OMalley. Plus, I think it's what they're going to do as well. And it's just a big chance to have OMalley fight for a belt, which will generate pay-per-view. So I genuinely believe this could headline a pay-per-view with a strong enough card underneath it. I'm not feeling... Maybe it's because of the way the decision happened. But remember when it was like, if OMalley wins, he becomes the McGregor to the Aldo of Yan? I'm not feeling that. I'm not feeling a massive buzz around O'Malley's name right now. You know? I'm not feeling that, now he's a superstar. Maybe it's because of the decision and how it's a bit controversial. Maybe if he KO'd Yan in highlight reel fashion, it would be different. But I'm not feeling the superstar energy. Maybe we need to get that belt around his waist in order to get that. But I think they need to capitalize because there ain't many other big names at bantamweight, and O'Malley's the biggest name by far. So let's do him versus Sterling. And it's also what the UFC is going to do, and I know they're going to do it as well. So let's just do that at some point in April? Something like that, maybe? April? Sounds good to me. Moving on to another fight, which is TJ Dillashaw. He needs an opponent, and I think his opponent should be Piotr Yan. I think that's just so obvious. They were supposed to fight each other before. It was the matchup that was supposed to be made. If Yan got past Aljo the first time, which he kind of did, but didn't, of course, because of the circumstances. And I think they should just do Dillashaw versus Sterling. Dillashaw versus Yan. Dillashaw versus Piotr Yan. Both guys coming off losses, both top contenders. Yan's going to need a little bit of time off like OMalley because they did go to war. Dillashaw's going to need a little bit of time off to heal up from his shoulder. Let's just save this fight for early or midway through next year. April, July, June, May, wherever they want to do it. Let's make that fight happen. TJ Dillashaw, Piotr Yan. They both want to fight each other anyway. And I think it'll be a great striking match between the pair of them. So let's make it happen. Dillashaw versus Yan in a fight night main event. Sign me up. I think that's a great matchup. Manon Fiorot got a big win against Caitlin Chookagian. I don't want to see her give in to Shevchenko because I think she'll lose. In all honesty, that's the main reason I don't want to see it, because I just don't think she'll win. And I'm not into these flyweight contenders fighting for a belt if I just don't think they're going to win. I'd rather see a Taylor Santos rematch, because at least we kind of know that she's got a good chance of winning. So let's do Manon Fiorot versus Alexa Grasso. Alexa Grasso won a fight in the main event recently. Manon Fiorot just won a fight as well. And let's do that on a card next year. February, March, fight night. Man, they're going to do a main event with it. Yeah, I don't want to do a main event with it, but they're going to do a main event with it. So, yeah, Fiorot versus Grasso. We'll see how it goes. Moving on, Belal Muhammad got a big win over Sean the Quitter Brady. And for Belal Muhammad, they want to do Covington Chimaev. They want to do Usman versus Edwards trilogy. Stay ready. Pay this guy to show up and be a short notice replacement. It would be even better if the UFC did what they're planning to do, which is hopefully Covington Chimaev on the same card as Usman versus Edwards in the trilogy. So Belal Muhammad should just be the sort of backup fighter, pay him a big sum of money, a big cash load for him to jump in there as a replacement, play the Volkanovski of the weekend of UFC London in March, if you will, and be that replacement opponent, get his show money, and if nothing happens outside of that, stick around. I don't think he should have to fight another contender coming up the rankings, but I will say this, Belal Muhammad. If Jeff Neal beats Shavkat Rakhmonov, you better be praying Shavkat wins. That's all I'm saying. Because Jeff Neal has a win over you, where he like knocked you down a bunch of times and beat you up, and the UFC, they can say you are in line for a title shot or a big fight all they want. Wins over you speak volumes. So I'm just saying, if they make Khamzat Chimaev Covington and they make Usman Edwards in a trilogy and you're the backup opponent and you think that guarantees you at some point a title shot, they're going to be waiting a long time. Let's be real. So Belal should be hoping Covington beats Chimaev so he can just scoot right in against the winner of Edwards versus Usman. Or he should be hoping, you know, Jeff Neal don't win emphatically and call him out because he beat him before. And that's not going to look too good for him, really. But Belal Muhammad, stay ready. I'm sure he'll get some kind of opportunity if he helps out the UFC in that way. Moving on to another fight. Nikita Krylov got a big win against Volkan Ozdemir on the prelims, and I feel like the matchup for him is an absolute no-brainer. And I think that no-brainer is against a man by the name of Anthony Smith. I think is the perfect matchup for him. Top-ranked guy, number 5 in the world, number 6 in the world. Nikita Krylov's number 9. Should be moving up to number 7 or something like that. So they're going to be pretty close in the rankings against each other. And I just think it's the perfect matchup to happen at light heavyweight. We need some progression. I don't think Jamal Hill should draw any of these short straws against any up-and-comers. I think he's sort of earned his shot against maybe an older guy at the top at some point coming up soon. So, yeah. Let's do this. Maybe Jamal Hill can fight the loser of like Glover Teixeira, Yuri Prohaska. Stay ready in the meantime in case anything happens. But yeah, I want to see Nikita Krylov versus Anthony Smith. Winner of that one can start looking towards the top of the rankings again. See if they can get themselves back up that division. Or maybe the winner of that can take on the winner of Ryan Spann, Dominic Reyes. Something along those lines. But I think that's a good matchup. And Smith's injured as well, so he's going to need a little bit of time off. And Krylov just fought in a war, so he's going to want some time off. So let's do that. Early, mid next year. May, let's say. Moving on to another fight. Muhammad Makhachev got a big win on the prelims. Didn't look too impressive, but I think he's ready for the test. And I think this is going to be a close odds fight as well. And if it's not, I might buy it on the underdog. Do not disrespect the great Tim Elliott. The true test. And I'm going to tell you another thing. This guy right here might be the Tim Elliott of the middleweight division. For Cal Baralho in his next matchup. I might have given it away. Muhammad Makhachev versus Tim Elliott is the perfect fight to take place at flyweight. I think they went at each other on Twitter at one point. Makhachev called him out at one point as well after his last fight. But now he's beaten Malcolm Gordon. He arguably should be ranked number 15. And if he's not, he should definitely be getting a ranked opponent. 3 wins at unranked areas of flyweight. You've got to be looking at a ranked opponent next at least. So let's do this matchup. Him versus Tim Elliott. I think it's the perfect fight to make. Tim Elliott will accept anything. And I'm telling you, if after Tim Elliott watched that fight with Malcolm Gordon, you know, Tim Elliott's got some really good scrambles. We saw that against Tagir and Bekov. So I feel as though it's going to be Makhachev versus Tim Elliott. Using the old guy Tim Elliott to try and move Makhachev up the rankings and have him start looking towards the top 10 of the flyweight division. But he's got to get past Tim Elliott first, which is no easy task. Especially after his last performance where he did show some weakness, although winning impressively. We move on to the last matchup to make, which is Cal Baralho versus, he got a big win over Makhmud Muradov. Didn't show a great ability, though, and this is why I've put him against this opponent, just to see if he really is for real. Okay, the middleweight contender that proves if you're for real or not, okay? But we have to, I'm not talking Tavares yet, because I think he might lose. And also Tavares is a fight against Gregory Rodriguez in January. But I'm talking Brazil. Baralho, although not having the best of performances and going to a decision, didn't take any damage. So let's turn him around in January and put him on the Brazil card against a guy outside the rankings because of the lacklusterness of his performance. and put him against GM3. This will really tell us. You think you're the grappler of the division? If you can out-grapple GM3 for 3 rounds without getting guillotined or rear naked choked in round 3, then you're actually a good grappler. And then we can start seeing you take on the ranked opponents of middleweight. Plus, Cal Baralho's a young guy, so he's got time to take on these unranked guys. Just put him on that Brazil card and get him a win in front of his home crowd if he does beat GM3. But this is a very tough test. GM3's been looking very, very good recently, so I just think this is the matchup that needs to be made. And I think that's done. That's all of the matchups made. Again, do I want to see OMalley get a title shot next after the decision? And also, when you look at other guys that are in the division, like Marlon Vera himself, that could be asking for a title shot and stuff like that, probably not. But it's what they're going to do. So that's what they're going to do. Anyway, like and subscribe. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye.